Hello and welcome to Precon Decon, the video series where I deconstruct the pre-constructed decks of Magic the Gathering's history. In this video we are continuing our look at the decks from Torment. So we are now going to look at Sacrilege, which is the white and black deck from Torment. As with all the Torment decks, it is part black. That was the theme of the set, that black was kind of pushed in a kind of story and power sense. But we'll see how it worked out in this deck. So we have a deck list here, 25 creatures, 8 sorceries, 3 enchantments, 24 lands. No instants, which is actually kind of a weird choice to make, I think. But we have a mana curve off to the side there. So let's take a look at some of these creatures. So, starting off, one of the rares of the deck is Angel of Retribution. 7 mana for 5/5 flying with first strike. It's kind of boring, but you know, it's obviously a big flyer. It sort of closes out games, would be very difficult to deal with, I think. Yeah, it's just kind of yeah. As far as rares go, it's kind of boring just to be a big flyer with just some keywords. But anyway, it's fine. It's fine. Thing is, like with Torment, like white and green had notably fewer cards in the set. I think there was only sort of like 20 new cards for white and for green in the set. So the pickings are quite slim. as we'll see when we get to the kind of the end section where I talk about what other potential cards could have gone into the deck. So this was it really. Like this is one of the 3 new rares for white in the set. Anyway, so you have a single Auramancer, 3 mana for a 2/2, gets an enchantment back from your graveyard into hand. There were enchantments in here, weren't there? From what I remember. Yes, there's 3. So it's not exactly great, is it? It's not not exactly high level of synergy. But and I would say the enchantments in here are not that strong, apart from one of them. One of them's quite good, which we'll get to. But yeah, this kind of feels like it doesn't belong. This most of the time when you were playing this deck, I feel like this would have nothing to do. This would just be an expensive 2-drop or a 2/2. I mean. It's 3. You know what I'm talking about. 1 Even Cloud Chaser, just good. Just a good kind of utility creature, 2/2 flyer that destroys an enchantment. And then 3 Mystic Familiars. So we looked at the Mystics in the Odyssey deck Liftoff, where they were the big theme. This is just another Mystic. So it's basically a Stormcrow, which for the time that was 2 mana for a 1/2 flyer was okay. When you hit threshold, which when you have 7 cards in your graveyard, and you will, that's a big theme of this deck, as we'll see. Gets +1/+1, has protection from black. So that's not terrible. That's actually a pretty good common, I think. So gaining protection is always like such a really strong ability. Because essentially it's just you become immune to 1/5 of the cards in the game, which is really really good, I think. And then these are not so great, I think, what we've got here. So we have Stern Judge. It's 3 mana for a 2/2. Tap, each player loses 1 life for every swamp they control. Terrible synergy in this deck because you are also playing swamps. So, yeah. Really, really not great. I don't think this would have killed them, say, each opponent. Well, that's what it would be now, I guess, if it was remade these days, like with that kind of design and rules templating. But yeah, this is you would have dropped this. This is pretty bad because it just hurts you. There's no guarantee your opponent will be playing black. So yeah, you would get rid of this. 3 Teros Faithful, 4 mana for a 1/4. When it comes into play, you gain 4 life. That's very expensive for not a great creature. It's just very defensive and gets you a little bit of life. It's just not a great thing to do with 4 mana. And then a single Teros Vanguard, who are 4 mana for a 2/3 with Flash, which makes them a little bit interesting. If you have Threshold, when they enter the battlefield, creatures you control get protection from black until end of turn. Again, that's pretty okay. Not wonderful. I mean, you have to jump through some hoops to make it. Otherwise, you have to jump through some hoops to make it worthwhile to get that kind of protection effect for your board. Otherwise, it's just a very expensive creature with Flash. It's just overcosted to be a 2/3 for 4. Anyway. So then a few black cards. So Cabal Surgeon, 2 of these. This is, kind of not a cycle, but there are a lot of these kind of Cabal minions in the set, and they're all generally very overcosted and not very good. Because Cabal Surgeon is 4 mana for a 2/1. which is horrible. And then you have to pay 4 mana, tap, exile 2 cards from your graveyard to get a creature from your graveyard back into your hand. That's just not it's not wonderful, is it? I mean, I guess you could say it's reusable, but yeah, it's just not very good, especially when compared to Gravedigger, who's just 4 mana 2/2, and you just get it straight away. You just get the creature you want. So not only is it easy to cast because it doesn't have double black, but it has more toughness, and so you get the effect immediately. Yeah, it's just Cabal Surgeon's just not very good. I skipped ahead there to Gravedigger, but Carrion Worm is what 5 mana for a big 6/5 fatty. But whenever it attacks or blocks, any player can exile 3 cards from their graveyard. If they do, Carrion Worm deals no damage this turn. So like Graveyard Hate is a big thing in this block, just because there's stuff like Flashback and Threshold. So I think that would have been maybe at the time I don't think it would actually. I think about it, Rich, but I don't think that's a tough choice to pay. Like, I don't. Is it? Yeah, it's attacks or blocks. It's not deal damage to a player, is it? It's just in general when it attacks or blocks. I think exiling 3 cards just so you don't take 6, or like a creature you're attacking or blocking with doesn't die to this. I think that's fine. I think that's actually kind of a negligible cost. So yeah, I don't think Carrion Worm is too good. And then a single Crypt Creeper shows up in pretty much every one of these black pre-constructed decks in Odyssey block. 2 mana for a 2/1, sacrifice and exile a card from a graveyard. It's fine. A Grotesque Hybrid, 5 mana for 3/3. When it deals combat damage to a creature, destroy that creature and it can't be regenerated. Discard a card from your hand. It gets flying, pro green and pro white on turn. That's quite good for the time, I think. Just being sort of like a 3/3 with this kind of Death Touch ability is okay costed for the time, I think. But that ability where it can gain flying and protection from 2 colors just by discarding a card, and like that's the only cost. You don't have to pay mana as well. Yeah, I think that's pretty good. Yeah, definitely. Deck definitely kind of benefits by having a couple more of him in it. So the other end of the deck is this kind of all-star from Odyssey block, Icarid? I don't know how you pronounce it. I'm going to say Icarid. So 4 mana for 3/1 haste. At the end of turn, you have to sacrifice it. But at the beginning of your upkeep, if he's in your graveyard, you can exile a black creature card in your graveyard. And if you do, Icarid comes back into play. Yeah, this thing is like pretty good. It kind of started off. I feel like this started off the trend of. I was going to say it started the trend. It didn't start the trend. There was like Nether Spirit like way back in Alpha, I think. But this is like we see these quite a lot these days. These kind of small black creatures with haste that usually can't block these days. But they have like quite a minimal cost to come back to life and keep attacking. So yeah, really, actually, this is kind of fun that Icarid's in this deck. I understand, it's like pretty popular in competitive play, or in kind of weird combos. I've never played with it or against it before, so I can't really speak for it. But I know it has like quite a good reputation and history within the game. But yeah, this would have been if you wanted them, picking up this deck would have been a good way to guarantee you got one. 3 Putrid Imp. This is a card I have played with, and it's great. So 1 black mana for a 1/1. Discard a card to give it flying turn, and Threshold gets +1/+1, can't block. Don't care about that Threshold ability half time. You are playing this guy just for his discard effect. Because I guess we'll talk about what the strategy of the deck is meant to be. I guess you would have maybe picked it up, but it's quite a weak theme, I think. I think it's meant to be kind of like a reanimator deck, or at least getting creatures into your graveyard. As we'll see in the next few screens, there are some cards that help you do that. But yeah, Putrid Imp is great because you can just discard, like, say, your Angel of Retribution. If that's in like your hand, you discard that and it's in your graveyard, and you've got ways of getting it out of your graveyard. Then as we'll see. But yeah, Putrid Imp is great. Probably shouldn't have a free discard outlet on a 1-drop because it's very, very good. Yeah, so 3 of them, which is great, I think. Then a single Whispering Shade. This it's just a shade with Swamp Walk. It's pretty boring. The art's really nice though. So yeah, as I was saying, ways to get creatures into your graveyard. So 3 Buried Alive, which is really good actually. So Buried Alive, 3 mana. you get 3 creatures from your library and just put them straight into your graveyard. That's pretty good because you know that's where you want them most of the time. So you can get easier access to them. In the graveyard, then you've got, you've got Zombify here. Only one Zombify, which is a real shame. Um, but yeah, this is what I mean. I think it's trying to be like a reanimator deck, or just, but it's not really giving you enough tools to work with. But Buried Alive is really, really good. It's like, yeah, reanimator deck staple. Like, I think what you've got here is like the foundations of something that could be turned into like a proper reanimator deck. I'll talk about more in the summary, but I'm just sort of saying as I go along. But 3 Buried Alive is really good. 4 Crippling Fatigue, which is, I mean, really nice to have a playset of this. This is an okay removal spell. Just the fact you can cast it twice, I think is okay. If you really needed, you could pay 5 mana and 3 life to kill like a X4 if you really needed to. Single Zombify, you just get a creature from your graveyard back into play, which is, for 4 mana, I think that effect is fine. I definitely needed more copies of this in the deck now. I would have trimmed a few of the other uncommons just to put, at least one more in here. And a single Malevolent Awakening. This is the enchantment I was saying that I think is pretty good. So 3 mana, and then pay 3, sacrifice a creature, return a creature from your graveyard to your hand. I think that's just really, really good. Obviously, it'd be a bit too good if it just went straight into play. But yeah, I think Malevolent Awakening is pretty good. Pretty, you can, as long as you can keep sacrificing kind of crap stuff to it, you can keep getting your best stuff back. So I think it's okay. Goes really well with cards that make tokens, which unfortunately there aren't any in this deck. And then closing out, we have Hypochondria, which is one of the disorders. This is a cycle of cards in Torment. So they all have the effect where you can pay a cost and discard a card to get an effect, or you can pay the cost and sacrifice itself to get the effect. So it's 2 mana, 1 white, discard a card, prevent 3 damage that would be dealt to target creature or player, or sacrifice to get exactly the same effect. Pretty weak, I think. If you want damage if you want to discard a card for a damage prevention effect, ideally you want something that just says prevent all the damage that something's going to deal. Just preventing kind of like a set value of is pretty weak, honestly. This is probably one of the weaker of the disorders. Definitely not as good as the blue one or the green one. And then a single Strength of Isolation, 2 mana aura, enchanted creatures +1/+2, and has protection from black. A lot of protection from black in this deck, which feels, I don't know. Again, there's always the thing, when a deck goes kind of too heavy on protection from one color, like, it's fine, but like you can't guarantee your opponent's playing it. So, and then 2 Tainted Field, tap to add colorless or adds white or black if you have a swamp. Quite like these tainted lands. It's really nice that each deck in this block got these dual lands. So what could have been? As I said, the pickings in Torment are kind of slim, really. I think we've kind of actually got the best cards that are possible, which is a really sad thing to say. Dawn of the Dead, though, I feel like this could have been a rare. I don't know. Instead of Icarid, okay, but I think this would have had more. This has a broader appeal, I think. So Dawn of the Dead, 5 mana for enchantment. At the beginning of your upkeep, you lose a life. At the beginning of your upkeep, you can get you basically unearth a creature. You bring it back and it gets haste, and then it gets exiled at end of turn. I think that fits in like really what the deck's trying to do, like a lot more. So I think that definitely would have been a card you would have added in if you wanted to keep it as is. Reborn Heroes are saying this is kind of like the only other really other white rare that's worth it, and he's like not great. He's 3 mana for a 2/2 vigilance, and if you have threshold, when he dies, you can pay 2 white, and he just comes back into play, which is pretty weak. I don't know if that's better than Angel Retribution. I was really scrabbling for like additional white rares that could have been. And then Shades Form, just because I have like a bit of nostalgia for Shades Form. I think it's okay. It's 3 mana to give a creature like the Shade ability, and then when it dies, it just comes back into play under your control. So you can put it on an opponent's creature, and if it dies, then you get it, which is fine. But yeah, in summary, I don't think this one's very good at all, honestly. I can see what it's trying to do, which is it's kind of set up to be a reanimated deck. You know, you have Putrid Imps, you have Buried Alives, you have a full playset of Gravediggers, but Gravediggers is raised dead effect. Um, but I suppose with Buried Alive, that combos into sort of like a weird, janky, like tutor effect, like you buried alive a good creature and then use Gravedigger to get it back into your hand. But you know, Buried Alive goes really well with stuff like Zombify, and there's only a single Zombify. Um, yeah, I don't think this would have played too well. Like a lot of the white cards are really weak in this. Um, there doesn't seem to be a lot of kind of like really good like synergy going on. Like it feels like there's just kind of like some random cards thrown together. I think it's like I said, I think it's an okay foundation for like building up into like yeah, like a proper reanimated deck. Like you just have you just add more zombifiers and like immediately it's much better. But yeah, I out of the torment ones, I think this one's actually probably the weakest. The last one I looked at, Insanity, I thought was like kind of a bit weak. But I think this one's worse, honestly. But that's just my opinion looking at the deck list. I said never really got a chance to play with this deck. So if you did have this deck and you used it, please put a comment below. Let me know if I'm wrong. You know, was it good or did you have to make changes? Yeah, I'd really like to know about this because I like white black and I like reanimator decks, and yeah, this one is just a disappoint is just kind of disappointing to look at. So yeah, that was Sacrilege. I'm going back next time. I'm going to be looking at the last deck from Torment, which is the red black one. But until then, thank you for watching and listening, and have a great day.